Hey, what's going on, everyone? So, let me see here. Okay, cool. Just get everything set up here. Cool. Hey, what up, Ryan? Just gonna get my microphone set up here. Let's see. Okay, cool. Can adjust the volume. Hey, how's everyone doing? What's going on, Ryan? Steven? Good to see you guys. Let me know what you're up to this weekend. Freddie, what is up? Let me know what you guys are up to this weekend. Let me know if I pronounce your name right. Good to see you. Good. Thanks for jumping in. Greg, thanks for jumping in as well. Got my cup of coffee today in fancy kind of Eastern European little cup here that I got from my parents. Remember, always drinking coffee out of glass or stainless steel, never out of plastic. Visiting family in Mexico, that's pretty cool. Freddie, it's kind of tough to see sometimes. The text here is so small. Stephen, good to see you. Yeah, I'm going to go visit my parents as well. They live in actually Las Vegas. So I'm going to go hang out there for 2 weeks in I think a week and a half or so. Dennis, good to see you. Steven, good to see you as well. I'm going to have a guest today, one of my former clients on. I actually haven't seen him in maybe 4 or 5 years already, maybe even a little bit longer. So, okay, cool. We just jumped in, Stefan. All right, let me get my notebook. Keep this professional here. All right. So I'm going to be interviewing one of my former clients today about his journey. Approved invite. And Emmett, good to see you. Let me know if I pronounce your name right. I always keep saying on these lives, I don't know how to pronounce a lot of people's names correctly. What is up? Long time no see. Give me a sec. I was just telling people I haven't seen you in, I don't know, it's probably been like 4 or 5 years already. Quite a while.
Oh yeah, well, since you lived out in California, for sure.
Yeah, and I was telling people that you actually came to me for coaching initially. I mean, it must be at least close to 10 years at this point.
Oh yeah, for sure.
At least
I
close
think
to 10 years.
Yeah, I think it was like 2013. Yeah.
Yeah, holy shit. It has been 10 years. One of my good friend of mine is on this live too. Megan, good to see you. Hope all is well with the off-grid living. Very jealous that you had the guts to disconnect from society. She's my role model now, to try to take it a step further. Isan, good to see you as well. So yes, one thing I was going to say, because I always get confused of how long ago that I haven't seen some of my clients. One of the clients I kept saying, like in the kind of introduction text, I'm like, oh, I haven't seen him for 10 years. We get on the call. He's like, no, man, I saw you like 2 years ago. I'm like, ah, shit.
No,
And I'm
no,
like,
has been there for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
Stefan, can you quickly do an audio test? It seems to be going on and off with your audio.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm new to this Facebook Live
Okay.
thing, so give me a second.
Now it's actually okay, but it was going on and off. Sometimes when people use like the wireless earbuds, it kind of sometimes goes on and off. It's
You're
okay.
coming on my phones. Is that okay?
Yeah, should be fine. If we run into any problems, we'll just iron it out as it goes.
Perfect.
But welcome to the show. It's good to see you again. As I was saying, I haven't seen you in a long time, and I wanted to invite Stefan on because a lot of you guys will probably have been or are currently struggling with the same things he was struggling with before he came on his journey. And it's been a long journey, 10 plus years. But one thing that's great is, honestly, ever since the program has finished, and initially Stefan did come to me wanting just to lose body fat and do a recomposition with his physique. He was already working out quite a bit, even had an in-person trainer, probably was even doing a lot of education himself, reading a lot of articles and books of that sort. He was totally into it, but just, hit this plateau and couldn't overcome the plateau, and also had some kind of injury, I believe, to his left or right shoulder. I forgot exactly, during his journey and stuff of that sort. But what's more impressive, and a lot of people, do emphasize like, oh, I lost weight, but I feel like what's more impressive is that he's actually been able to keep it off and actually improve his physique and even get more muscular and leaner over the 10 years, where in reality, if you look at the statistics, it's not that great. Most people, when I say most, I mean 90+% of people that end up losing any amount of weight regain it within 2 or 3 years, if not even more. And then eventually, after 2 or 3 cycles of that, they just get discouraged and just go on like a permanent weight gain program, for pretty much the rest of their life. And that happens for the majority of people. And I feel it happens for a couple of reasons. But I wanted to, first of all, maybe start with rewinding way back before 2013, and in terms of like how heavy you actually got, and maybe some things that led to that weight gain, and then eventually kind of what led you to want to kind of get more on a healthier journey and stuff of that sort.
Sure. But before I started with you, and I had lost a little bit of weight prior to working with you, but kind of in an unhealthy way. It was just a dumb amount of cardio, but still not changing any kind of habits or eating habits of any of the sort. So my heaviest was up to about 240, and I was that way pretty much from high school on. Or it was about almost 180 in junior high, and then got in the 200 range in high school, and that's kind of where I stayed and even gained a little bit of weight since then. But I tried stuff on my own, of course, did the YouTubing and the internet searching of what to do and everything else, and tried to put Frankenstein together some kind of program or something to get me on track. But what really happened was there was a trigger that I had. I do a lot of, as you know, I do a lot of theater and stuff like that. So I was on my way to an audition for a national tour of a show, and there's one of the characters in the show is heavy, is the fat one, so to speak.
They're like, why are they picking me for this role?
Well, the thing was, I kind of chickened out on the way there because I was like, I don't want to be the fat one. So I kind of like passed up on the opportunity, and I've always regretted it since. But that was kind of my trigger to be like, okay, I've got to do something different than what I have been doing, because what I have been doing hasn't been working. So that's when I kind of did a little bit of research and found you through actually someone else at the time who was using you. And yeah, that's kind of where it all started. Like I think everybody probably has that trigger at some point in their life where they're like, okay, what I have been doing has been okay, but I'm not making any progress. I need to see a little bit more progress, and yeah. So that's kind of where it all started.
Well, I do hear this often, and I get sucked in these internet and YouTube like influencer loopholes as well. But I feel like there are a myriad of problems of going down this path. One is the fact that even if you are following like a very competent practitioner in whatever area you're trying to improve in, just the thing is, it's like, and this even includes me, just the thing is, they never met you as an individual. They don't know your specific story and circumstance. And taking advice or giving advice from that vantage point is basically the same as like you showing up to a doctor's office and they didn't never even talk to you, and they're like, here, take this drug. And I'm like, dude, you don't even know like what's going on. Just take it. It's like, okay, but it's kind of the same, and it leads people, I feel, down a path of taking information out of context, even if it's good information, and also not being able to know exactly the precise way of how to apply possibly that good information under the appropriate context and appropriate intensity. And then there's, of course, like 9 out of 10 sources of information online are just like beyond bogus.
Yeah.
That kind of obstacle you have to overcome. Can you kind of describe maybe some background of, I tried this online and this, and it actually led me to be possibly more confused on my journey than actually aiding me in my journey?
Well, what I never really understood or could kind of grasp, I always kind of figured, oh, you just follow this one kind of boilerplate template that this XYZ person online is talking about, and then that's all you need to do. But there was never any kind of adjustment of the program. It was just kind of like, here, do this, good luck, you know. Uh, it never adjusted based on how I was progressing or if I was even progressing. And I had no guidance in that area as far as nutrition and diet is concerned, which quite frankly, is a lot more impactful with this whole process than I had thought it was in the beginning. I'm like, oh, I just walk into the gym, you know, push some heavy stuff around for a little bit and it'll all work out. But that's where I was most misguided, was the lack of someone who understood the process and someone who understood observing the changes in me and being like, okay, I see where you're going now. Let's adjust the program to go this direction now based on how you've been progressing, or let's make some adjustments because it isn't quite working. So that's where I really fell short, was kind of the follow through with, or the follow through with the program. I was just following some blank template or some basic template that I found, and then not adjusting it from there, just kind of sticking to it and not understanding why I wasn't seeing any progress.
Yeah, and I feel like occasionally those situations may work if the individual at hand is also investing a lot of time into reading like literature on PubMed.gov, also buying a lot of books on biomechanics or nutrition, and being able to iron out like the details or the missing gaps between just like a normal template program. Like if, for example, you're going into the workout program with an injured shoulder, and like half of the days are like on the workout routine are pressing days because they never did an assessment. And that's like that's another red flag. I mean, if a practitioner is just selling like blank templates, or at the end of their message, they're always like, oh, here, just take this supplement. You know what I mean? It's usually an indication that they're probably like more over in a business mindset versus a mindset of actually helping people. Because if they were in the business of actually helping people, and unfortunately it does take a lot of time to do so, but it would require some kind of very comprehensive assessment before even giving that individual any advice, you know? And also just the follow-up of actually working with them one-on-one for at least a certain amount of time to really get to know what's holding them back, you know, inside and outside of the gym, and also just getting to know their specific story, why they even, for example, landed in situation ABC, to even help them get out of it. Because without knowing that, it's like really you're just relying on dumb luck, and dumb luck never works out long term.
Yeah.
Although it may give you some short term boosts here and there, maybe, and that's even a big maybe too.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you even run into that problem even with where the injury my shoulder injury that I came from was actually working with one of the big box trainers in person, and it was one of those trainers that just kind of would text while I'm pushing something probably heavier than I should be pushing at the time, and I was like, it kind of hurts in the shoulders. Like, oh, that's just your muscles working. Just push through it. Well, that's what happened, and it really messed up my shoulder for a while, and I kind of was out of commission being able to do any kind of push stuff. So it's if you're not willing to at least do which I really wasn't and didn't have the kind of patience for it, as far as doing all the research and all the reading into the books to build a good program for myself, at least put in the effort to like know if you are working with an in-person trainer, if they're qualified to really do what they're doing, or if they're just kind of cash grabbing at the time, you know?
Yeah, that's another kind of poor path someone can take, is hiring an in-person trainer. Not that all of them are bad, some of them are beyond amazing and also just way better than me in every single possible way. But just unfortunately, probably a good 98%, and I've been doing this for 17 years now, as you know, 98% are just super bogus.
Yeah.
And super bogus in the sense that you're in California still, and California is a fairly regulated state in a lot of ways compared to many other states. But even then, you don't need a certification to be an in-person trainer. You literally just need a CPR card, which you can do online in about 2 hours, and like fitness insurance, and just call yourself a personal trainer, or even call yourself a nutritionist. And it's totally legal to do so, because it's not like a regulated phrase, not like a physical therapist or medical doctor or psychotherapist or something of that sort. And that's it. You're a personal trainer. And unfortunately, just a lot of people do get into it, like you mentioned, for the quick buck. They're not into it for the long haul, which requires like a lot of education, a lot of investment in education on the person's part. Obviously, the slow process of growing a legitimate business that actually legitimately helps people. But can you maybe talk about some obstacles you ran into that can save people a lot of money in terms of avoiding the wrong in-person trainers, some obstacles you ran into and stuff of that sort?
I I think where the really just don't what the problem that I had is I went into it thinking, assuming that because they're working at big box gym, they obviously went through some kind of process or program to get there. You know, I didn't realize quite how easy it was to get hired on as a trainer in these places. So, you know, I see even today, I see people that are regularly working out in the gyms I go to, and all of a sudden the next day they're a trainer at that gym. I'm like, wow, yeah, that's interesting. Like, you know, um, I, just the best advice I think I can offer is just kind of really get over the initial thought. They work at this gym as a trainer, so they must know what they're doing. Like, just go in it a little bit skeptical. I kind of assume that I'm on the skeptical side anyway on a lot of things. Just so I kind of go in like, prove me wrong. I think go in a little bit with that mentality. Don't be closed off to what they say, but do be just pay attention to what's happening and how you're feeling and how engaged they are during the sessions. You know, if they're like, okay, here's your program, go off and check in with me in about 5 or 10 minutes. You know, that actually happened to me with these big box trainers. You know, I kind of go off on my own and wander around the gym for about 10, 15 minutes and then go back to them like, I don't know what I should be doing. Can you give me a little bit more guidance? Like, I had to pull the guidance out of them a little bit, as opposed to them actively being involved in what I was doing, giving me feedback, whether it be form, whether it be checking in to see anything's feeling not right, you know, that kind of thing. There just was, be very aware of how engaged they are during the sessions, and then how you're feeling. And when you do tell them something, do they kind of dismiss it, or are they receptive to what you're saying and try to adjust or try to give you some kind of feedback or dive deeper to see what the cause may be? You know, I think it's just focus more on how engaged they are. You know, don't just blindly go in assuming they know exactly what they're doing because they are a trainer or quote unquote at this gym, you know.
Yeah, no, I found like even this is like you mentioned, it's common to have people on their cell phone while training you, which is a huge red flag. I mean, if you see anyone doing that, you don't need to get in an argument with anything with them or anything of that sort, but just know that that trainer isn't right for you. You know, they're not like thoroughly engaged in participating in your transformation process. Or if they're not providing you with a detailed program and a detailed outline of like what we're going to do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, quarterly basis. Where are you at now? Where do we need to get you? And have like a very clear vision of how to do that. I feel that's like very important and really lacking in the in-person training industry. Usually what ends up happening is you show up, they chat with you for like a minute or two, you sign a waiver, you start working out, maybe even 30 minutes after meeting them, you already have your first session basically. And usually what ends up happening is you show up and they're like, well, what do you want to train today? You know, or they ask you, it's like, oh, what did we do yesterday? You know, well, like you're supposed to have that on a detailed program. Literally everyone, like medical doctors keep detailed records, physical therapists keep detailed records, registered dietitians keep detailed records. It's like, I don't know why personal training hasn't quite caught on. It is so in the dark ages of not planning anything. And if
Yeah.
you don't plan anything, like you just plan to fail. That's really it. And at that point, you just have like what I refer to as like a rent-a-friend. They're not even like a coach. You're literally paying them to be your friend, to count your reps, and they're really good at counting reps, counting from 0 to 12. They probably have like a PhD in that for sure. And then basically like spotting you, so you're paying $100 an hour for them to count your reps and spot you. If all that detailed programming and stuff of that sort isn't included, and it shouldn't be included in their little notebook, they should be giving it to you too. because they have to eventually, good coaching, what good coaching really looks like is making the person self-sufficient and making them educated enough to be their own mechanic. Because inevitably, because how the human body depreciates, especially muscle mass. I mean, dude, you could be training for three weeks, you take like half a day off and you lost all your
Yeah.
gains, you know? It's like not that severe. But because of the fast depreciation rate, the actual like patient or client, whatever you want to call them, has to know what they're doing too, you know, which was a big part of, I know with my time with you, I would, make sure you have these programs, know how to implement them, know all the techniques, like what's required to eat, how it's required to sleep to maintain this physique, et cetera, et cetera. But it's just, and once again, there are many coaches that do way better job than I do, but it's very rare to run into that. And it's just so weird to me because it's like, seems like such a common sense approach to how education should happen. I feel like in one vantage point, it could be due to make sure the client can't leave and is dependent on the trainer too. And basically, they become like your 401k plan at that point, you know?
Yeah. Like, I don't know what it's actually doing, but I'm going to it every day, and I know I have to have it. Like, but you're the only one. I probably, and it's California, so of course everyone's image conscious out here, and there's 8,000 people that are trainers out here, you know. But I had probably worked with, I'd say, a good seven to 10 different trainers before I started working with you or trying them out, you know. And you were the only one that actually I felt, oh, this is actually planned out. My first day, I had everything laid out clearly what was going to happen. Like, you were totally engaged in the process. You know, the in-person ones, I think your first meeting, they get you all excited about it and then get you on that first workout, you know, the first day you meet them and they just beat you up. So you feel sore the next day and like, see how great we are.
Hmm.
Like, you know, and
Yeah, that's another thing. It's like, dude, people correlate like intense workouts with actually competent training. I'm like,
yeah,
no, it's not. I'm sorry. I could just have you stand on one leg with your knee slightly bent and your quad is burning, and that is intense. But is that going to grow your quad at all, or is beating up your body? Moreover, people are such an exhausted state these days. You're like you took better care of yourself already coming in, but most people aren't at even at that level when coming in for coaching. And that would be like a disaster to throw them into intense workouts like that, you know? It's like, dude, dude's like 40 pounds overweight, sleeping like 4 hours a day on
yeah,
10 cups of coffee. His adrenals are non-existent. So I have a great idea. Let's destroy him in the gym even more. That's a freaking disaster, but happens all the time because it's kind of like I don't know, it's the silly perception that's like good coaching or something like that sort. And I would say like our workouts were probably tough, but they're not like super beat down workouts. You probably could easily work out for even 30 or 40 minutes more after every workout, you
yeah,
know, like no problem. But maybe if you can, for our listeners, since you do have an extensive experience with various in-person trainers, if you can outline maybe the individual trainers and the things you saw in them that weren't that great of traits and you wish you could have possibly saved your money on them, you know? Because I'm pretty sure cumulatively you probably spent like tens of thousands of dollars on coaching.
yeah. I don't even want to think about that, but
Well, I'm going to get you to think about it.
yeah. I think a majority of them. There was one that did have everything planned out, and I was with him for a couple, probably 3 or 4 months. No, I take that back. Probably like 6 or 7 months. It was they make you buy them in these cycles, you know, or packages of whatever, sign up for 6 months, or you sign up for 3 months, or you sign up for six, and you get all this discount. So I'm like, great, I'll do that. Um, and I always, with myself, tried to like, for me, if I'm spending money on it, that's my way of staying like involved in it. Like, I've already forked out this money, I'm going to do something with it, like, because I'm cheap that way. But with the one, after a while, I became his therapist, and the program wasn't really growing. It started out great, and then it, strangely enough, the program kind of was stagnant and flatlined, and was a lot of the same thing. But the sessions became more of him talking about his problems with his girlfriend and asking my advice on stuff. I'm like, wow, okay, we can go have lunch and talk about that. But in the meantime, I should, I'm paying you. You should be my therapist, if anything.
Mhm.
But I've had to do. But yeah, so that was one, that was where I kind of ended it with that one. But the rest of them were very much like, I never saw this kind of elusive program that they had me on. It was very much, like you said, not necessarily asking me what I want to do today, but it was, today we're going to just do this. But I always felt like it was a teacher that didn't necessarily use their planning period to figure out what they're going to do. It was like, let me wing it, you know, and we'll figure out, I'll put you, do some exercises with you and see where we can possibly work that day. I never saw an actual program. They never gave me any kind of physical thing to look at or prep for, or even really what to do when I wasn't seeing them, you know, in the days that I was on my own. So a lot of the times when I would go in on my own, I would just repeat what they had me do when I saw them last. So I really wasn't, it was just lack of direction was the biggest problem I saw with a lot of these trainers. It was lack of clarity on what the program kind of, there was no beginning, middle, and end. It was like, we're going to start today and I'm just going to kind of give you programs off the cuff, and there was no real kind of end in sight or goal in sight. It was just, we'll kind of work during these 3 months you've paid for, and then I'll try to sign you up for another 3 months, you know. And I don't really I didn't feel like they cared whether I showed up or not. They had my money, and if at the end of that 3 months, they'll try to get another 3 months worth of money out of me, you know. I didn't feel like there was any investment, even if I know they work with a lot of people, and but at least give me the impression you care about what I'm doing, you know. And that was not happening. So that was the most common thing with all of them, was, in my opinion, what translated as lack of preparation, lack of any kind of clear direction or goal. I definitely didn't have that problem with you. I was you're like, look, I still remember, and I tell people about the very first time that we started working together. You're like, here's the program. It's 3 months. You follow it or you don't. You're like, don't ask questions. Just, you know, do what I tell you, and you'll be successful as long as you just do what I tell you to do. And I was like, all right, I've heard this before, but I'll try it. But absolutely, within like the first few weeks, I was like, oh, this is definitely different than what I've experienced before. So
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, it's just, I don't know why the industry hasn't caught on. It's just so weird that it's like, in my opinion, that's like an easy part too. Well, it's an easy part if you know about programming, which a lot of them actually don't. There are probably also, like I mentioned, no certifications required to become a coach, you know? So they could have like easily just read an article on men's fitness and they're just rereading it to you that very day. They're like, oh, this workout's on men's fitness. I'll try it with Stefan today when he comes in, or something of that sort. You know, there's no planning. There are no thorough assessments like at all. It's usually just a quick Q&A, and then like maybe not even that, maybe just a waiver, and then
right.
let's figure out, let's also throw you into a group class with 4 other people that are completely different from you, but doing all of the same stuff. But somehow they're on the same programming goal now. I just, you know, I'm trying to calculate the quantum physics there. Yeah, I'm trying to calculate the quantum physics there, but it's not quite adding up. It's too complicated of math for me. But yeah, and I feel the only reason they get away with that is because people just know very little about what good coaching or what good program design or good nutrition design even looks like. So they're able to like, well, he said a few fancy words, you must know what he's talking about, and or she, whatever, or they, and that's it, you know. And that's how the industry kind of keeps running. And a lot of times they don't have an end goal because they hope to keep you around long enough, but really there's always a freaking end goal. So with clients, there's typically a fat loss program. I mean, unless the person's super overweight, is like 4 to 6 months long, you know, and it is determined on how many pounds of weight they need to lose, of course, but it's realistic to do, you know, like 1.2, 1.5 pounds a week for sure with someone that's like 30 pounds overweight. Yeah. And then that's it. You got 4 to 5 months. And then the only fat loss program that works is one where you don't have to do a fat loss program ever again. So you should be done with the fat loss phase of your journey for the rest of your life. And then the coach, like what I've been doing with clients, is spending like a month or so educating them on how to thoroughly do a lean bulk progression, basically for the rest of their life. As you know, you've been on it already for 9 years or 8 years or whatever long, maybe you might gain like 1 pound of unwanted body fat here and there, but it's not like you're ever going to run into a situation where you need to lose like 20, 30 pounds of body fat ever again. And moreover, it might actually, help you to put on a little bit of pounds of extra body fat when you are trying to gain a lot of muscle, and stuff of that sort. But then they need to be educated on how to do that part themselves. And at that point, they already have, 6, 8 months of good programming. They could cycle through those workouts, or like with me and you, I just been providing you just workouts because now you know how to do all that other stuff, and you're looking mainly for like novelty, not necessarily that these new workouts are like so magical, but in the sense that you just want something new to keep it interesting for doing it for so long and stuff of that sort. So
And different goal. I mean, your goal change. Like for me, I'm always trying to get ready for a specific role of on in a show. That so. I mean, I think I've came back to you probably, over the course of, 10 years or whatever. I think I've come back to you at least 4 or 5 times, for various programs here and there. Another, a 3 month program, or whether it's like the one I just finished with you just actually last week was my last week on it, was the 4 month program. So I'm always, but what you do provide is like, what I'm super thankful for is like, it's what you provide is sustainable. So like, as long as, you pay attention to what you've been telling your clients, the time you're working together, from our first session 10 years ago, I was able to sustain and maintain that, which I think has always been a problem with other trainers too. It's like, okay, so now that I'm on my own, how do I keep this going, or at least maintain what I've achieved? A lot of people tend to go backwards, or, gain back everything they worked hard for those few months, but with your program, it was so clear, and you explained everything so well along the way that I was able to like take that and keep, at least if anything, just keep it going, and at least maintain the progress I had made. So yeah, it's been great.
well, I know like in any successful transformation, like working out and nutrition, of course, on the surface seems important, but what really kind of keeps it sustainable is when a person actually like changes massive aspects of their environment, like externally and internal environment, in a sense that they start approaching life also from a more sustainable vantage point. I know it like our personality types tends to be type A, so you could easily fall into patterns of probably like overworking and stuff of that sort, which I've done like many times myself. I'm not above it at all. But can you kind of describe also just a lot of those changes you inevitably had to make to not only like accomplish goals, but at the same time be like happy and not so stressed out and not so like you're on such a strict time schedule. It feels like you're on anxiety overload 24/7 just because you never get a chance to just like lay back and not do anything.
Yeah, definitely had to change my work, whether it be, my day job, so to speak, which was at the time, especially when we first started, was 7:30 to 4 o'clock. And then I had to do, on top of that, I would have a show or something going on. So then I'd have a few hours, and I'd be at rehearsal from, 6 o'clock till 11 o'clock at night. And then by the time I got home, you need some time to unwind and kind of, you know, let go of the day a little bit. So I wasn't getting in bed till, midnight or 1 o'clock, and then getting up again at 5 or 6 for the job the next day and doing it all over. So my sleep was really poor. And, just little minor stresses that you don't realize how much add up to anything, like driving into work every day in Southern California,
That's not a minor
yeah,
stress.
yeah, right.
That's a major stress, especially 405 parking
Yeah.
lot.
There's times where I'm like, I'm surprised I didn't just drive my car off the edge of the bridge right now, but like, or to somebody else. But at the time, my office wasn't that far on where I lived, but it took me 35, 40 minutes to drive there every day one way, and then I'm driving back. Majority of your life gets stuck in the car and traffic, dealing with, I mean, you can even look around here in Southern California at people sitting in their cars and nobody's smiling, nobody looks happy. Everybody's got some, weight of the world on their shoulders. But for me, what works so well, and it's what's happened now is, I mean, I'm in my office now, but I'm only here for 3 hours a day. I'm here from 9 till noon, and then the rest of the time I'm at home. I can work from home. I can do what I need to do. I go to the gym the moment I leave here, because first off, nobody's there at this time, so it's super relaxing then, which was always a problem before going to the gym. There's always so many people at 4 or 5 o'clock, of course. So it makes gym a stress. It makes
Mm-hmm.
work, nothing is relaxing. Like even your gym, which has become my outlet and kind of a relaxing place, it wasn't at the time. So as hard as this is, I remember you talking back in the beginning about, kind of abandoning corporate world and, getting rid of those stresses. I'm like, how do you do that? How do you do? I was so fixated on money. Of course, it's again, Southern California, everything's picking expensive down
Mm-hmm.
here, but there's a way without, you're not strapping yourself. I mean, don't get so fixated on I know I'm going to say minor details, but they really are in the scheme of things. Like you ultimately have to figure out what's going to be the most beneficial for you in the long term. So working with, fortunately, the boss that took over the place where I work, was very open to what he calls a lifestyle business. So it was like, we don't need to be here from 7 to 4 every day. Let's just come in when you come in, get done what you got to get done and go. Like if you want to work from home, whatever is easier for you. So literally we worked it out to where I'm only here 3 hours a day. So that eliminates the job stress. We've moved the office to where I'm only 5 minutes from my house now. So that eliminated the driving stress.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been more selective with shows, learning to say no, basically, not taking on everything just to grab money, to get more money, or, whatever the case may be. So it's just kind of reevaluating your lifestyle a little bit and figuring out what is necessary and what's not, really taking a step back and being like, that is a major stress. How do I either one, eliminate it, or two, reduce it somehow? Like, because you can't always eliminate it, but you can possibly find a way to reduce it or make it less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and setting healthy boundaries is so key. And I feel like, unfortunately, just a lot of people don't have the confidence to do that at work. They're like afraid, like, oh, I might be passed out or passed over for a promotion, or my boss might fire me if I just ask to work from home. I say, like, if you can work remote, like for sure, do it. It will, um, as long as you use your time wisely too. You have to remember you can't escape your own bad habits. So if you're carrying your bad habits to wherever you go, it's just going to follow you, obviously. But like during the pandemic,
Yeah.
everyone was working from home, obviously. And at least my coaching clients, it wasn't the case for most people, became like more like mentally and physically healthy, because obviously I was coaching them like, hey, you got an extra 2, 3 hours a day now. Let's do this with those 2, 3 hours. If you want to sleep in an extra hour because you feel tired, just do so. Or if you want to take a nap midday for 30 minutes, just do so, and now you have way more than enough time to work out. So let's get you using movement as medicine, at least 3 or 4 days a week to kind of get the ball rolling. And then kind of taught them like a lot of tricks of how to make their meals really fast, and stuff of that sort. And, the importance of having a regular sleeping schedule with at least, especially if you're training, if you're training like 4 or 5 days a week, dude, you need at least like 8 hours a day and a midday nap, possibly, just to really keep going, especially if you're like 35 plus, 35, 40. You just need to take your recovery way more seriously if you do want like a lean, muscular physique, or just be happy.
Yeah.
I know that one too, and not be just so damn tired and grumpy all the time. But I say, like, dude, if you could work remote, for sure, do it. But your situation is great too. If you want to do some kind of hybrid mix, I really think, like, dude, just sitting in the office all day is kind of total waste.
Yeah.
And if you really accumulate like the amount of time people actually work in the office, it is probably 3 hours.
Yeah.
So if you go in there and just really like hyper focus and double down and basically like don't even blink at the screen
Yeah.
and just really get, you could probably finish all your work in 2 or 3 hours. Because if you count like you show up to work, you chitter chat for a bit, you check your emails, that's already like 30, 40 minutes. Then you start your work. It takes like, 30, 40 minutes to get into the flow of it. You do like 2 hours of work. It's lunchtime.
Yeah.
You're gone for an hour, you come back, it takes you like an hour to get back into the flow of things. You do another hour or two of work. Oh, you got to go home now. So you just worked 3 or 4 hours cumulatively during an 8 to 10 hour shift. You didn't work 8 to 10 hours.
Right.
And then all your employees bugging you here and there, which kind of does these, just imagine like comparing driving on a empty highway to Vegas versus driving around in Irvine, California with the constant stoplights. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, it's going to take you forever to drive a mile that way versus just on a highway. You're like, boom, just going straight 200 miles an hour, not listening to the speed limit, just hoping you don't turn into like a big fireball
Yeah.
when a little rock comes on the ground or something,
For sure.
But those little things are so important to your fitness program.
Yeah.
And I feel like just especially in Western culture, they're like totally not even accounted for. They're like,
Yeah.
we'll just focus on your workouts and your nutrition, and then everything will work out somehow, or at the medical office, we'll just give you a drug or whatever. You know what I mean? It's this like quick, like 1, 2 variable solution. But dude, last time I checked, the world's, in order to run, like has to have a million things going all at one time to be able to successfully run. It's the same thing with people, you have so many variables that are holding them back from achieving their mental and physical health goals. All of those variables have to be accounted for all the time with the appropriate level of intensity on a consistent enough basis to really see a good resolution of whatever their symptoms may be. And you're like an example of like, you have to change your work, also change parts of your internal environment of how you perceived work. Can you maybe chat about, have you adopted more of like a minimalist, materialistic lifestyle to help you like free up your time and mental energy?
Yeah, definitely. I used to be a big, like, as far as the materialistic side, I was always a big electronics person, like the newest, everything new that came out. I was wanting, whether it was a new cell phone, whether it was a new computer, whether it was a new whatever. Or, as you know, with me from before, it was always like a new car or something like that, or, so that's, I've abandoned a lot of that, and just realize it's not important in the bigger scheme of things. It's strange how it's not strange. It's interesting how what may seem an insignificant change adds up. So if you make a lot of 2% changes in your life, they add up to a lot by the end of the day, So if you make a small change here and a small change in this aspect and a small change here, it's pretty shocking how big of an impact that makes on you overall. So, it's not always going to be a massive change, but just remember that you're making a lot of little changes, which will add up to a pretty big change at the end of the day. So that's, as far as the materialistic side, that was the biggest thing for me. I've kind of reassessed and abandoned a bit, was the need or desire for, I always have to have the newest fill in the blank, and plus it's expensive.
Yeah.
So my money stress I was worried about by having to work 17 hours a day or whatever, is gone because you don't have that habit you're having to pay for over here. So it all just kind of compounds on itself.
Yeah, and it's a little cheesy, but Tyler Durden in Fight Club said it best, the things you end up owning you. And in a sense, like I do feel like indirectly, just the more stuff you own, just the less freedom you have. Because all of a sudden, if you have like a lot of overhead and, let's say you don't like your job or you don't like where you live anymore, all of a sudden it's very hard. It's not impossible, but it's very hard to shift the boat all of a sudden. But if you have like a lot of financial freedom, because maybe even if you're not making a lot, but your just expenses are so low, all of a sudden you're like, oh, this isn't suiting me anymore. Or maybe it even did at one point, but is no longer, suitable for me at this point in my life. Okay, well, it's time to change course. And I could do that because I have the financial freedom to do that. And I'm not so tied down with like crazy amounts of bills. And unfortunately, in American culture, I see people are really just putting themselves in like not that great of a lifestyle to like purchase a lot of things that are, for the most part, there are no absolutes, but for the most part, providing like sugar highs at best. You know, it's like it's cool for like a month, but then after a month, it's like whatever, but your money's gone or your payments are still there for that thing and your money's still going out for whatever. And I'm like, dude, like more lasting happiness can be achieved from so many different other aspects that actually like legitimately will provide you with more happiness and health and that are most likely either free or like pretty damn close to free,
Right.
you know? So,
Well, just the one of the biggest stresses that came off of from me personally was, for the past probably 5 or 6 years, I've had like zero debt. Like I just kick, I want to abandon, like I said, the need for all of the new gadgets and all that. It's not that I'm depriving myself, if there's something I do want, I go get it or whatever. But I was, like I think a lot of the U.S. kind of everybody was living on credit. It's
mhm.
like just have it. I have credit, so that must mean I have the money. It's like no, I mean that's another conversation. But the when I kind of eliminated that, I was able to really chew everything down. I haven't had any credit card debt. I haven't had like anything for 5 or 6 years. And tremendous off the shoulders. But it was just from making those decisions to kind of reevaluate what's really important and kind of eliminate what wasn't.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. I'm curious, have you ever been confused by the labels in the grocery store? In Yevgeny's book, he demystifies the difference between caged, cage-free, free-range, and pasture-raised meats. He also covers how to avoid GMOs, source high-quality water, fish, supplements, and other related topics. It's a beautifully illustrated, non-technical read that comes with a comprehensive video series and other extended learning materials. Jump on Amazon and check out the book titled Anti-Factory Farm Shopping Guide by Eugene Trufkin. Now let's dive back into the podcast.
Well, can you go over some exact things that you changed? Maybe you can give some ideas to the audience of that help, save you financially quite a bit. And also more importantly, I feel free up your mental energy. Because when people are, they do have a lot of bills, it could provide in some situations a lot of micro stresses too. And obviously your central nervous system doesn't do that well with micro stresses. So they always feel like super tired and fatigued and um, just overburdened with like all these bills coming in and then having to really, you have to work at that point to pay those bills. And you end up being like a slave to the paycheck, which could be stressful and really suffocating to the soul, if you really aren't careful going down that path. But would you like to, are you okay with sharing some of the tips you've done?
Sure. For me, it was it all came down to control. So if if for whatever reason that month I was struggling with bills, and to me that gave me a lack of control, and so what I would do to feel like at least fool myself into thinking I was gaining control was go buy something. My as long if I went out and bought it, even if it was on a credit card or something like that, I still felt like I had control because I'm making a decision to go do that. But all it was doing was adding to the debt that I had, which then makes you, when you have a stressful job, or want to make a change with your work, you're like, I can't, I need this paycheck because I've accumulated over the course of these years, all these bills, all these, monthly payments on this, and then a monthly payment on a car, which, because I was so concerned with always having a nicer car, or, it's Southern California, everyone drives everywhere. So there's a lot of emphasis on what you drive here. So I was trying to keep up with the Joneses quite a bit on that, but all it was really doing was, on the exterior, as like everyone thought I was doing great, or everyone thought I was, super successful at what I was doing. But behind the scenes, it was just I was living paycheck to paycheck and a massive amount of debt, and causing me a tremendous amount of stress. So when my job got tough, or, the area I was living in got tough, I couldn't do anything about it because I just needed the paycheck every month to get by on the minimum amount of bills that I had, you know, minimum payments on bills. So for me, once I, for me personally, once I, and it was a struggle, I will admit, gave up that control of, or that need to feel like I have control by buying something, or which for my thing, my vice was going out and getting something new, and it was never anything cheap. Like I'm like, oh, I'm going to go out and buy a new laptop today, or I'm going to go out and get the, it was always higher price tag stuff because that felt significant to me. That made me feel like I still had control of everything, when in fact it was just adding to the chaos, you know, behind the scenes and the stress. So once I realized that and kind of abandoned that need, or abandoned that misconception that that was being in control, for me that worked, because then I was like, oh, I really don't need all this stuff. I will have more control of my life if I just let go of some of these things, get rid of it. And then I'm like, oh, I really do have control now, because if I wanted something, or if I wanted to get away for a while and take a trip, I could, because now I didn't have the bills racked up. I didn't need to, it was more flexible with my job. I can just be like, I need to get out of here for a weekend or a week or whatever, that, if that makes sense. It was just, for me personally, it was just realizing that what I thought was me being in control of my life was actually not, and just a Band-Aid or a smokescreen, and adding to the problem. That's really was the biggest turning point for me. It sounds kind of simple, but it was harder to do than I thought it would be. It was years of thinking I was in control and undoing that habit, fairly quickly. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I feel, yes, it's critical. And yes, a lot of times it does take a long time, especially to change your internal environment that led you to specific problems. Sometimes the external environment for sure is important, but I find it's much easier to manipulate and change to your desire versus your internal environment. Ironically, because your internal environment you have 100% control of, supposedly, but it's the hardest to change, Kind of like that one saying, the hardest prison to escape is the prison of your own mind, because first you got to know you're even in prison, and a lot of people don't know they're in prison to their pathological behaviors. And it's so obvious. I mean, just walk outside, like anywhere in America these days, like 9 out of 10 people you run into are like full of obesity and disease, like full of mental and physical pain. Like you mentioned, your short observation on seeing people's facial reactions on the freeway, just going to kind of work. And it looks like, their soul died at 30, but their biological body keeps kind of going on and striving for this like fantasy life or whatever is socially programmed in that environment, to kind of like, this will re-merge you with your mommy and daddy loving you if you accomplish all these things, that delusional belief and stuff of that sort. But yeah, and I feel like that change right there, and I'm sure you've made many other changes, are what make a successful fitness program work. Without that happening, dude, it's like I can give you like literally the best workout and nutrition programs available. I just don't see any lasting change happens. There are no absolutes again. You might see like one out of every few hundred cases, coincidentally, all that other stuff happened at the same time. But all the other times it's just one failure after another. They lose their weight, they regain it all the time. And I'm sure you see this with so many of your friends at this point. You can reevaluate already being at 45, how many of them have tried fat loss programs or getting rid of health issue ABC, and it always comes back. They're always, and if lottery winnings statistics, they end up solving one problem, just another one pops up. Yeah. Then all of a sudden they got to work on this symptom and this symptom and then this symptom. They're always chasing symptoms their whole entire life. And the irony is, sometimes I over my career did hear people, like, I would say like, dude, your HAQ score sucks. You're like overweight. You're like miserable. I think one thing that you might want to consider is possibly getting like a different job or changing occupations, or stuff like that. And they're like, well, how am I going to be able to afford my high quality lifestyle? I'm like, dude, what kind of lifestyle are you talking about? You need like a bottle of Xanax and like 5 Red Bulls just to have enough energy to wash the dishes in the morning. You know, you
Yeah.
like haven't seen your penis in like God knows how long already, you know, and you're like blood pressure is through the roof, cholesterol is shitty, you're on all these medical drugs. And I feel like that's the sad part about American culture these days because they've somehow been brainwashed to believe what's not important is super important,
Right.
and what's important is not important at all, or they kind of say it is important, but then their behavior and actions say the complete opposite. You know, I don't know if you've observed this yourself consistently. So
Yeah. I mean, again, I keep coming back to, so, down where I live. I think especially here, environment plays a huge part in how people try to live their lives because so much emphasis is put on at least your perceived your level of success in your life based on whatever, smoke and mirrors you're put up. So I think it becomes very challenging and stressful to keep up with that. And I still struggle with it a little bit, but the moment you can kind of realize that it doesn't matter, like you really, no one else cares. You're the only one that's focused on, you're the only one paying attention to it. No one else, everyone else is too wrapped up in their own lives
yeah,
to really give a shit about what you're, what you're doing. But everybody thinks that everybody's watching them and criticizing or, social commenting on them, but they're really not. They're doing the same thing you're doing by trying to keep up their own life and their own whatever they, appearance they put up. So
yeah, totally. And nobody freaking cares at the end of the day. Not necessarily that they're bad people, but it's just they're busy. They got their own stuff going on. You know, they got their own bills to pay, their own deadlines at work. And at the end of the day, like nobody really cares about your company. It doesn't really care about you for the most part. And I'm sure, and once again, it's not the company's fault. Oftentimes it's a competitive marketplace in most fields. You know, it's an international competitive marketplace. They got deadlines that need to be met for the company to stay afloat because they obviously need to be paying out paychecks to a lot of employees and stuff of that sort. So the pressure is on them too. It's not like they're just like laying back and enjoying the show most of the time. But at the end of the day, it's like if you're gone, um, dude, they need to get another person in your spot ASAP. They don't have time to like check on you and stuff of that sort. I'm pretty sure by like week 1, like people will stop contacting you. Week 2, people will even forget that you even existed at that company, even if you're there for like 20
yep.
years, which kind of sounds depressing from one vantage point. But from another vantage point, look at it this way. It's like, dude, if nobody cares, then just be like, what makes what makes you happy, you know? Be
Yeah.
like what's true to yourself, because what does it matter if it doesn't matter to you, you know?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to you then. So
Yeah.
stuff of that sort. Um, but yeah, I've observed that, and unfortunately, it's like a lot of times, I don't know, people agree with you, but they still don't change. You know, they're kind of too afraid to change. The pain teacher isn't that great in their life yet. You know, was there actually like a point where I know you mentioned that one time when you're possibly asked to, you know, be that overweight character in the show? Was that your greatest pain point, or was there like another pain teacher that really rung the bell, like, dude, it's time to change, or this is going to just get worse?
That for me was probably because at the time I was still really wanting to make an attempt at making like a full-time career out of it. And so at the time, that really was my kind of trigger point, at least to start the fitness journey aspect of it, of the change. The stress level management was later. That even came after you and I worked together for the first time. Um, that was more that there was a point where it's like I just wanted to like kind of get in my car and drive, and I didn't know where I was going to go, and I just wanted to, wherever it was somewhere not where I was, and I didn't care, I didn't care what happened with a job or where I was going to live, or it was just very much like I just got to go somewhere and it's not here, and which isn't necessarily realistic, just to get, but that was for me the moment I realized I really need to make some kind of internal life change at that point to not go crazy. um, Yeah. So the fitness journey, start of the journey trigger was that show and not wanting to be cast as the heavy one. But then the internal kind of shift really happened a few years after you and I first worked together. I definitely heard what you had said. You were big in the beginning on the psychology of the process, which I had never experienced before as well. It was always just like, oh, here, let's push some heavy stuff, run on this thing in place for a while with no purpose, and everything will be great. That's all you had to do. But you really brought the psychology aspect of it into it, which was new and it made sense. I heard you at the time. I just didn't fully adopt it until, it was always playing in my brain. And a few years later, it clicked. And I was like, okay, I see where he was talking about now with this stuff, how that has to change as well. Otherwise, you're still in your old habits. You're still in old bad habits that are going to impact what you're trying to do over here with the fitness side of things.
Yeah, and over 17 years, I have seen like a huge relapse rate on if people like finish, let's say, a successful fat loss journey, but they stay in the same environment that they're in that led to that fat gain, or kind of like maybe a proximity environment that led to that, then the chances of relapse are like pretty dead set,
Yeah.
like almost 100%, I would say. I mean, in an extreme situation, it's like the same as like imagine someone finishing a drug rehab center and going back to the neighborhood with all the druggy friends and the drug dealer. It's like, dude, it's like you don't need to be like a PhD in psychology to know that that person's chances of relapse are like literally almost 100%, especially since they're probably not going to find work, and they're going to be more inclined to go into that and stuff of that sort. And it's kind of the same thing. And unfortunately, I have seen that with some of my past clients. I told them like, dude, you have to change all these aspects of your environment and stuff of that sort. But some people are just also just so heavily attached to their work personality, that's like basically who they are 24/7. And they think that's who they are and don't have another personality. And a lot of times they come into the coaching program and they're already super overwhelmed, let's say at a management position, you
Yeah.
know, and I get them to where they want to be. And I'm like, well, you got to change this aspect of your work, maybe work remote, maybe get another job, because it's like you can't be working 60 hours a week. And you also don't like your boss that doesn't care for you and berates you in front of your coworkers or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
the story can go on and on. And then they agree with me, and then like a promotion comes up and they're like, well, we want you to be a director at this company where you can't even handle the workload as a manager, but now you're going to be a director and working 15 more hours and have more people to look after. And they're like, I'm going to do it, Eugene, but it's going to be different and it's going to be all okay,
Yeah.
And then sure enough, 3 years later, they come back to me just as overweight, if not more overweight. And they're like, well, you're right. I don't know. I just see that all the time. It's like, dude, it's almost like a 100%, like 1-to-1 correlation, in that case.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's I think they come to a fitness journey expecting that to be like the quick fix for whatever's wrong with their life. And as long as if I get myself in shape, then everything will be fine. But I thought that too. And it's not. There's so much more internal stuff that has to change in order for that to happen. I mean, you can have a great physique or whatever, but still be pretty messed up internally. You're still not going to be happy. So I think taking both hand in hand are really important, and people should keep that in mind. Like adopt that mentality that, yes, the physical, the workout program will work, but just be prepared to do a little bit of internal soul searching a little bit and changes there. It's not as daunting or scary. It's daunting. It's not as hard or scary as you think it is once you actually do it. First.
Yeah. And I feel like during the process, you feel better and better too, and you're like, oh shit, I should have been doing this all along. Like, what was I even thinking, thinking like working 60 hours a week is going to be good for me sitting in front of a computer or something of that sort.
For sure.
Do you feel the workplace is kind of tough to tell from an outside perspective, but do you feel the workplace is becoming like more fast-paced and hardcore, or are they leaning more towards like more balance and stuff of that sort these days?
I kind of, well, I think a lot of companies, especially if anything, the kind of lockdown pandemic thing did help companies realize that the old school mentality of everyone has to sit in an office for these 8 hours isn't necessary. So I not all companies have adopted that, but I think a lot are retaining that idea of, yeah, that working remotely is a little bit more accessible or is a little more acceptable. So I think that's a positive that came out of it. Is yeah, I even noticed it. Like I told you, currently I'm looking at possibly relocating out to the Palm Springs area.
Okay, cool. Nice place.
Yeah, super relaxing for me. It's always been like a chill, relaxing place for me. I always feel good when I go out there. Everybody's friendly out there, and there's just, well, most people are out there retired and they have, they're not working anymore, so they can enjoy life a little bit. And with my job now, I don't have to be in the office. I just come in the office to kind of get out of the house for a few hours. But I can work remotely, so I think I would hope that the workplace is making that shift to at least allow that remote aspect to stay in place, which I think will eliminate a huge amount of stress for a lot of people. The freedom of not having a boss looking over your shoulder for 8 hours, or having to come in here and make, like you said, 3 hours of work stretch out to fill an 8 hour day, always feeling like, there's other stuff I could be doing. Like, I feel like there's a little bit of a shift. I don't know if it will be, I'm hoping it'll be permanent and kind of go in that direction, but I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I just figured, like, dude, as long as people get work done, like, what does it matter? If it gets done like here, there, on Mars, I don't care. Just freaking get the project done and have it in at the right time with the appropriate amount of quality. And like, what does it matter? I understand some jobs just need to be done in person for sure.
Right.
But like the ones, like I mentioned, when people transition to remote work, especially when they use that difference of time wisely, I've seen the quality of their life actually improve a lot. Um, Versus spending 2 hours in traffic, then 2 hours talking to coworkers. And then, sometimes the social politics at work is energy draining to deal with, this personality, that personality, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, but that's pretty cool that you're planning on moving to Palm Springs. That's actually one of my favorite spots too. It's just like super relaxing and the weather's pretty nice most of the time. Sometimes like scorching hot, which is okay too, but it's better than being like super cold.
You're on the sun. Feel like you're living on the sun for a few months, but I don't mind it. I hate being cold, so it kind of works out I never feel good in the cold. So, but yeah, I think that's the one last kind of, well, maybe not the last, but the one big stress that I still have here is just the amount of people, and it's growing so fast here. There's everywhere you look, there's another, high-rise set of apartments that's, another 1,000 people there, another 2,000 people here. It's like going up so fast around here that it's just too much. It's like the infrastructure even isn't set up for that many people. You can tell it just gets more and more congested and jammed up. So it'll be nice to escape that stress. That'll be a huge stress for sure.
I remember when I first moved to that area, there wasn't even an Irvine Spectrum.
Oh,
It was like a desert. Yeah. Back then, like even there was that Edwards 8. There wasn't
yep.
even that movie theater or anything. So yeah, it was kind of weird because that community was really like low key and laid back. But now it's like basically kind of like LA for the most part, at least when I left, like everyone's like working super crazy long hours. Like you basically stop seeing your friends after college, or if you see them on the weekends, they're like super haggard and tired and overweight and stuff of that sort, but they're living their dreams supposedly. That's kind of tough to tell, you don't want to. I'm like, dude, I don't know how you could be living your dream by living like that.
No, I mean, just the stress of an apartment around here. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to not be in an apartment, but these new apartments that go up, I mean, hey, you've got a 600 square foot, room, and you're going to be paying $3,000 a month for it. I'm like, great. I'm like, geez, it's too much. Like I don't know how people starting out or, starter homes or starting families or whatever can do it here. It's so crazy, but that's another.
Yeah, I kind of lucked out and just got like a house in Texas like 4 or 5 years ago when the prices were like pretty low. And it had like a guest house too, so I just converted that to like an Airbnb. It has a guest house with its own separate entrance and everything, so you don't even see the guests. And that alone just pays for the mortgage. So basically, just by moving here and working remote, I'm able to pretty much be rent free, completely. So which frees up quite a bit of time, which is another advantage of working remote. Then you can just kind of move anywhere you want and actually have like a really good quality of life and not necessarily need to be paying like atrocious amounts of money for an apartment that's not even that great anyways, you know.
Yeah, I think it just gives people more actual control of their life. You know, you're not, if you're home and you're like, shoot, I've got to do whatever it is, laundry, or I've got to do that at the house. You know, if you're working remotely, you can fit that in still, and or, you know what I mean? It just even if you don't do it, you at least have that stress gone of, I'm stuck here in an office for 8 hours when I know I have this stuff I could be doing at home. You know, I think it's a great thing for sure.
Yeah, and oftentimes living in those super expensive areas, it could funnel people into occupations they don't really want to be doing
Right.
because they need to be making like a certain amount of money per month. And yeah, then you might get stuck all your life, you know, then doing something you don't want to be doing that's like pretty disastrous at that point. And no amount of, I guarantee you, no amount of boot camps, medical drugs, nutrition programs, and Tony Robbins seminars are going to help you at that point, dude. It's going to be a freaking disaster across the board. So, do you have any other pieces of advice, especially for, because I still see a lot of 40 plus year old males. Like, I'm going to do it tomorrow. I even one time had a 70-year-old tell me, you know, not now is not the good time to take care of my health. I'll take care of it next year when A, B, and C lines up. And I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
you're freaking 70 years, you're freaking 70 years old, man. You might not have next year, you know?
You're playing the law of the averages here. Like,
Yeah. I,
I,
I mean, you're at the point of getting diminishing returns, you know?
I know it sounds cliche, but like I always just kind of, when people say stuff like that to me, I'm like, look, you may get hit by a bus on the way home. You never know what life's going to throw your way today, tomorrow, you know, in an hour. So you may lose your job in an hour. You don't know what's going to happen. So it's like, never, if at all possible, just don't wait. If there's something you want to do, and if it, especially as you're, you know, a fitness journey or anything like that, or you know, a major life change, just do it. Just don't wait, because if you wait, it'll never happen. You're just going to say, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. Oh, something coming up today. I'll do it. Like it's just, it will never happen if you just keep saying, what if I'll do it tomorrow, you know? Even when I do some coaching for singers and actors, I'll ask them, one of the questions I'll ask them is, how committed are you to progressing or to improving, or you know, to getting to your goal? And not that I'm going to charge them an exorbitant amount of money, but I also ask them, what are you, how financially invested are you in it? You know, because for me, what works for me is, if I financially invest in something, if I've already forked over the money, I'm going to put the effort into it. I'm not about losing money. I don't gamble. I'm not going to put money into a machine where I'm not going to get anything out of it. You know what I mean? So just get off the fence. If anything, advice I'd give is, just get off the fence. If there's something you want to do, just get off the fence and do it. You'll be so much happier in the long run if you do. Don't get stuck in the rut of waiting till a better time. There's never going to be a better time. So you're always going to be busy. There's always going to be something coming up, you know, home crisis or a life crisis, or, you know, whatever. Just make it happen.
Regarding the finance thing, and this kind of goes a little bit with our minimalist kind of discussion here, I always found it really weird when I told people like, oh, you know, something simple like, oh, start eating organic food, you know?
Yeah.
You can buy the same food, just make sure it's organic, whole food. And they're like, oh, it's too expensive. Without first even knowing the price, they're like, oh, it's too expensive, because of kind of propaganda and social beliefs that it must be more expensive. But I'm like, well, looking over your finances here, and just the average American spends about $8,000 to $16,000 a year in non-essential expenses, which the bulk majority of it just includes eating out and alcohol, you know? And I'm like, well, you're spending $8,000 to $16,000 a year on behavior that's, leading to that bad skin you told me about, leading to those man boobs or that gut you told me about that you don't like, or that flabby butt, or that poor digestive system. Uh, and you're spending $8,000 to $16,000 a year, but a $2,000 calorie a day organic diet at the supermarket level is about 5,000 a year. So that's even less than that's pretty much almost the half the price of that $8,000 to $16,000 you're already spending on decisions that are fueling the mental and physical pathology, which you told me you're trying to get away from.
Right.
And they agree, and then they still keep doing it, man. But I'm like, they totally agree. I mean, the math is there, is undeniable. And I mean, the average American spends about on an international 12-day trip, last time I read, was like $3,700. And that's like a 12-day trip. Usually, um, most Americans, I feel, really should use that money to invest in good coaching, which is
Yeah.
really going to provide them with the happiness, or getting closer to the happiness they're seeking, versus like a 12-day getaway and then you're back into the cesspool of whatever led to your pathology, basically, and back to normal. And then they're like, oh, I don't have money for coaching. I'm like, wait a minute, you just spent $3,700, if not more. Some trips are even way more. Let me add that, on a 12-day trip, which provides you like a sugar high at best, and then basically you're back to where you don't want to be for the most part, and most people where they don't want to be to begin with. And I like the big part of the program is to set up a lifestyle too that you feel you don't have to escape from, and you actually enjoy day to day. So you basically save money on a lot of trips, because you feel like you have to escape. And a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people use travel as a form of escape. But I'm like, the money could be better spent there. So you got the money there. It's like, if you average out like the cumulative cost of healthcare in the US, the average American is spending $12,000 a year on medical expenses related to their poor lifestyle choices, which they're funding $8,000 to $16,000 a year for. So it's like you're paying $8,000 to $16,000 a year, then to have to pay medical bills for another $12,000 a year. And then all those medical bills typically just give you symptom management strategies, which don't work anyways. So it's like, I mean, it's a disaster across the board, and people are funding their own pathology. And it's the weekend. If anyone just sat down and for once, just be honest with yourself and look over your accounting, you will see that is roughly how much you're probably spending, if not more.
The eating out alone is I think would surprise people, like the cost, at least around this area. I mean, people are spending an average of 15 to like 20 to $25 a meal just to go out. You know what I mean? And that's not including anything if they're buying drinks or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't tell me that buying organically in a grocery store is going to cost you more than that. It's not. Like you can make so much more at home. Like you can make something, for sake of conversation, $8 to $10 a meal, as opposed to the 25 you're spending on whatever you just had out there. That's, who knows how it's being, prepared in the back.
Yeah. Do you find, I kind of lucked out, and I've been in a relationship for already 8 years, and I lucked out just to kind of run into a very health conscious person. But now, since you're health conscious, do you find actually that makes dating exponentially harder?
It it's definitely surprisingly challenging to, find somebody on that same page as you. It's, it kind of raises your bar a little bit, or your expectations.
You mean back to normal?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or at least that normal.
So I think I think it definitely does, because you don't necessarily want to be partnered up with somebody that doesn't share that same mentality as you, or at least that same, you know what I mean? Otherwise it's just going to be this constant, little devil on your shoulder trying to get you to go back to the way you were. Um, I mean, if you've been lucky with it, so that's great. But I think it does make it a little bit challenging. It's not impossible. I just think it raises your standards a little bit, I think.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
anyway, like don't feel like you have to settle for somebody that doesn't necessarily fit your um
Core
core.
values.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say I would even argue just like if you had the two options of dating someone that doesn't fit your core values versus just being alone in your life, just be alone in your life. I guarantee you, you will be much happier off, and it's totally fine, even if that's the opposite of what society is doing.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think like if you do the opposite of what society is doing these days, it's actually a huge compliment.
Yeah.
Because society,
I,
9 out of 10 Americans right now are metabolically sick. Most are overweight, miserable, drugged up beyond belief. So it's like, if anything, you want to be the complete opposite of that. It's like an actual compliment. Don't do what they do. Don't get into the careers of what they get into. Don't eat the food they eat. Don't hang out with the friends they hang out with. Just don't do anything. Just do the complete opposite of what they do, and you'll be good. You
yeah.
know?
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with being okay with being by yourself. Like, you know what I mean? I think that's good for anybody to be one. It eliminates the codependency on somebody else, you know. Don't be in a relationship because you're a codependent. Be in it because you really want to spend your time with that person, you know. If I'm guilty of that in the past as well. So it's you know, when you realize that I don't need to be with anybody, but I would like to be with this person is a nice realization. You know what I mean? And it makes the relationship stronger for sure.
Yeah, and I feel yeah, and you got to be super careful these days just because so many people are so mentally and physically sick. Even if they're kind of like physically in shape, they could be not doing mentally well or just not smart with their finances or have some other weird thing going on. So you got to be super careful. And one of the best things is really just to really home in on your core values and what's important to you and be really crystal clear and honest about that. And then also you yourself be actually like mentally and physically well also, so you can have a clarity of mind, because you can't come up with clear core values if you're like psycho,
Yeah,
so or like schizophrenic, it's like imagining friends and stuff of that sort. So obviously that'll be the first step on making sure you iron out the details of your health. But well, Stefan, are there any other topics you'd like to cover or any helpful words for anyone struggling with their mental and physical health challenges? Because I feel right now people will probably get better advice from you than they would out of 9 out of 10 in-person trainers, better health advice and coaching from the honest journey you've gone on over the years.
yeah. I think it's just if you're really truly ready to do it, like just do your homework and find somebody that really fits well with you. I mean, if they're watching this now, then at least they have someone pretty darn great at their fingertips. Just take advantage of it if they haven't already. Like I've tried to send as many people to you as possible over the years. If they've asked me, hey, who do you know, or where did you go? I'm like, look, just go to this guy. He's amazing. He actively involved in what you're doing. Very clear programs, and the program can change, and it can change based on how your progress is going. And he is very aware of that and adjusts accordingly. Like just get yourself. It's really hard to do on your own, I will admit. Like it's not impossible, but unless you're willing to invest a tremendous amount of time and effort into the research that it takes to really build your own program and get the knowledge needed, not only for the simple task of what to do at the gym, but like the nutrition elements of it and the psychological elements and shifts that need to be made in order to achieve it, then just jump in, head first with somebody that does like yourself, that just totally gets it and understands it and is more concerned with helping people make major life changes that are going to be impactful and long term, as opposed to quick cash grabs that are just, they don't care what happens to you the moment that you're done with your 3 months with them. They got your money. So great, 3 months is up, enjoy whatever life you have after that. Like I think where you really excel is it's about longevity, and it's about long term with you, which is so much more beneficial than a lot of the coaches and trainers out there right now. So the best advice is if you're willing to, if you're wanting to make the change and you're willing to make the effort, and it really doesn't take that long to make very meaningful, impactful changes like some people think. It may seem daunting at first, it may seem unachievable, but the moment you jump on a program, I experienced this firsthand with you. The moment you jump on a program that is focused and tailored to you specifically and is focused on making a big impact in your life, it's pretty amazing how quickly a change you see. Like I remember seeing major changes in myself within a week and a half, 2 weeks of doing your program. I mean, the first week, definitely I think I was in shock about, it's like, oh, this I should be doing. It was a lot at first, but
I remember you mentioning that 10 years later. You're like, I got to do all this. And I'm like, yeah, just all casual.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I'd look like a, drowned rat in the back bay gym there with no air conditioning and doors closed.
Those are the days.
Yeah. Years of orphans or whatever we said back then.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I sent that newsletters out, like 40 people unsubscribed from it, but that's okay.
They weren't ready for it yet.
Yeah, they weren't ready for reality. That's okay.
The change that happened after that, it's actually spoiled me a little bit, because when you get to a point where you're maintaining, or where a lot of I've seen a lot of successful clients you've had on these live casts since you've been doing them, like, oh, they've maintained it and they're doing great. But when you get to that point, the change you see is not as drastic as that initial change that you see when you first start your journey. My point in that was, you will see pretty major change when you actually make that decision to start your journey and work with someone who knows what they're doing, like yourself. Like, just, it's not daunting. It happens faster than you think. And yeah, I guess that's kind of the best advice I can give is, just if you're thinking about it, make the internal decision to do it, and get with somebody like yourself who's just great and understands the whole process and cares about your long-term goal as opposed to your wallet for the next 3 months. Then that's the best advice I think I can give, is just get off the fence and do it. You'll be so much happier as a result. Like,
Oh,
it sounds a little cliche, but it's true. Like, I've gone through it. So
well, thanks for the kind words. Let me see. Some people may have a few questions and then we'll call it a day. So Lakia, she's saying, I have the experience of meeting someone with mental issues and drug abuse in the US. People act very kind of first, wish and hope I will meet someone with discipline in my life. Okay, not quite a question, but thanks again for being on, Stefan. It's great to see you again. I haven't seen you for quite a while, and it's always good to see someone that has gone on an honest journey and didn't just cop out, and then also what I see a lot of people that don't change is they nest in lifestyles they don't want, but then they have a form of cognitive dissonance in order to avoid really hating themselves. They start creating lies or beliefs to justify staying there. Like, oh, I should be thankful for this job or thankful for this relationship or something of that sort. And unfortunately, at that point, it's really tough to get them to turn around once they create these delusional beliefs and lies that they them force themselves to believe in, and then really honestly, genuinely believe in.
right.
But honestly, like, just for those in that position, I would just recommend, just look at yourself in the mirror, man. Being on medical drugs, looking 10 years older than you are, being like overweight, like having energy swings, mood swings, anger issues, depression, anxiety, psychologically induced chronic insomnia, low testosterone, all that stuff's not normal. It's been normalized for sure, but it's definitely not normal at all. all are signs of pathology and something wrong going on. It's basically your body just desperately trying to communicate with you that, hey, you got to change your ways, and unfortunately people don't listen to those, and then they create delusional lies and belief systems to justify that behavior and kind of stay like that their whole life. And then the worst case scenario is then they have kids and they teach their kids to be exactly the same way too, which is the saddest part of all. Because the biggest, most dangerous virus of all is a belief system that doesn't facilitate mental and physical health, and you see that that's the greatest virus that we're dealing with today, which leads to 800,000 Americans dying of heart attacks every year, which are so avoidable. It's so easy to avoid. You have close to 135,000 Americans dying every year from strokes, 650,000 Americans dying from cancer every year, over 120,000 Americans dying from type 2 diabetes, which is so easy to avoid.
Yeah.
So easy to avoid not being type 2 diabetic because people think it's like some kind of mystery. I'm like, no, it's not a medical mystery. It's actually super easy to avoid. You're just listening to all the wrong people. We're just not listening to anyone. And like a myriad of other hundreds of thousands of deaths randomly throughout there. I don't know. So kind of like a sad way to end this chat, but also it's important for us as a culture to realize that that's not normal and something has to change, because until you realize that something's not working, the initiation or want to change is not going to be there too.
Agreed. Yep.
So thanks for being on. Wish you like a great transition to Palm Springs. Let me know how that goes. I think that place is super awesome and mellow and laid back. So I'm happy you're moving there, and have a good weekend, everyone. Thanks for jumping in, and take care, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you've ever had trouble losing weight, or you've lost weight, but still didn't have the ideal body or health you're aiming for, please feel free to reach out anytime and book an assessment. Eugene will work with you to cover your goals in detail, see what's holding you back, and go from there. In the meantime, feel free to check out the countless testimonials on Eugene's website in the link below. In the testimonial section, you'll notice everyone has various backgrounds, are of all different ages, and all have had different challenges in their life, but they all have one thing in common: they were all able to find their health and achieve their ideal body. You're also welcome to add yourself to the Facebook group in the link below. There you'll have access to the live videos that Eugene does weekly on Sundays, and other helpful content. Thank you again for tuning in.